Good afternoon, Racket Athlete fans. We're back for another episode on the Racket Athlete podcast. Today we have on another guest called Douglas Wood, who is in his 70s. He's currently in triathlons. But today we're going to be basing our chat around mindset development for the Masters athlete. Welcome to the show, Douglas.
Good, thank you. Pleased to see you.
Right, so I think what we're just to mention as well, Douglas is actually based in Scotland. He's near the middle of the country. I'm in the northeast, so we're kind of connected that way a little bit. So yep, and so the first question I'm going to ask Doug as such is just tell everyone, the listeners, a bit about his background and where he's gotten to today, basically.
Well, I suppose starting in my teens, I was always interested in running and did a lot of hill climbing as well. And I suppose running developed substantially when I went to university. I was in with a very good cross-country team, very strong runners, training a lot, and that brought me on. And really since then, I've always been a runner. I did cross-country running, hill running, road and track running, and when at university I actually got into orienteering, which was a sport that really started its development around that time, mid-1960s, in the UK. And I came to that really from the two directions, from the fact that I was doing a lot of running, and also my map reading skills from hill climbing. And that sport suited me very well. And that was my main sport for many, many years. Up until my 50s, I still do it, in fact. And after my days of serious competition, I was national level Scottish champion, involved with the GB team, and I was the GB team manager for a number of years and working with the GB squad. And then I later developed into triathlon. I think when you're doing a lot of running, particularly when I started running before they had really developed decent running shoes, I'd taken a lot of wear and tear, so that running was becoming problematical. And I was very fortunate working in an environment where I was close to a sports complex, and I was in the habit of running at lunchtime every day. And if I didn't run, I would go for a swim in the pool.
Right.
Also cycling to work. So triathlon, which involves swimming, cycling, and running, was something that I kind of fell towards. And that was something I took up in my 50s, in the 1990s, really. And when I retired in 2007, I really found that was an opportunity to develop my passion for triathlon. And I took coaching qualification. I'm a member of the local club in Stirling, one of the club coaches. I take part in triathlon events and have been taking part in events ever since then. It has an age group competition, 5-year age bands, and I take part with the GB age group team, and I'm now in my 4th season of the 75 to 79 age group.
Wow. Yeah.
Looking forward to the coming season.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's quite an inspiration. Obviously for anyone listening, to hear that Doug's, he's in his 70s and he's still competing at GB level in his age group, which is absolutely amazing. I absolutely applaud that, which is great. So that's a bit of a background from yourself, Doug, which is awesome. It's quite inspiring, to be honest. I mean, obviously you transitioned from a few things when you were younger, and then you found yourself going into triathlon, and you're still competing at a high level, GB level, which is absolutely amazing. So what we're gonna dive deeper into now.
I have to emphasize that I'm competing with my contemporaries.
Yeah.
Although I'm in open competition as
Yeah,
well,
of course, yeah, of course, yeah.
my opponents are really my contemporaries. So
Yeah.
we
The-
all slow down dramatically.
Yeah. So what I'd like to delve into, as I would say, we're going to talk, as I say, the mindset development of a masters athlete today. So coming from the mindset perspective, um, first thing I would like to just delve into is from obviously what difference do you find that being a young athlete and a masters athlete, kind of focusing on the mindset? What would you say the differences are, or is there a difference, or how it develops from being a young athlete, a masters athlete, focusing on your mindset?
Mindset is really quite
Yeah,
a
of
broad
course.
thing. I mean, it's often said that performance in sport is 30% physical, but 70% mental,
Yes,
and talent is not enough. The mental issues, sports psychology is now highly developed, and it's certainly a big element of serious sport, professional sport.
yes,
Uh, and I think, while people have always recognized that, I don't think it has actually been sort of part of or thought of as a separate issue
yeah,
until
yeah,
more recently. And, when I was a younger athlete, people had different attributes of, determination, mental strength, and so on, which they harnessed. Some people gave up more easily than others, some were more competitive than others, and so on. But that was part of their makeup.
yeah,
And I think now it is something that, while we all have these attributes to a greater or lesser extent, it is now channeled more in the sense that it's developed to a point where people can harness particular attributes for the context that they're in.
yes,
So they're actually an awareness that you actually have these attributes and actually using them.
yes, exactly.
So, I mean, the younger athletes obviously are trying to develop and improve their performances. Older athletes, I think, need to be smarter. They need to train smarter, not harder. Get the best out of changing capabilities. Have more emphasis on keeping healthy and trying to delay the slowing down process.
Yes.
I mean, I knew nothing about mental strength training
Hmm.
until I realized that I needed something like it.
Yes, of course,
And
yeah.
that came about through having had um, an injury that required a serious surgical repair, and that was after I retired.
Yeah,
Uh, and the rehabilitation process really became one where it was more of a mental issue than a physical issue.
yeah.
In my case, I was returning to sport after a repair to my Achilles tendon.
Okay.
I was out of action for a season, best part of a couple of seasons.
Hmm.
And when I started running again, I was very tentative and was concerned about how I would be,
Yes.
and fearful even about what the
Yeah.
situation was. Um, you know, could I feel it? What would I do if it started to feel sore?
Hmm.
And these were the limiting factors,
Yeah. Yeah.
and really quite a blockage.
Of course.
And uh, I was very fortunate in coming across someone who could help me, a mental strength coach, a person called Kim Ingleby, who I gather you've met.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've met Kim Ingleby as well. Yeah, she came on my podcast
And
previously.
she was the one person who understood what the problem was and uh, knew that she had techniques that could actually
Help.
help me to overcome it,
Hmm.
which indeed is what happened.
Yeah.
Uh, but that was targeted towards a particular issue.
Yes.
Whereas I think mental strength coaching in the general sense is a really valuable tool for any sports person to develop the sport. because it allows them to actually focus on what are the issues that separate performing well from just going through the motions, as it were.
Yeah, of course. So a couple of things I would like to pick up on there, Doug. One question I would like to ask you, from your experience as a younger and an older athlete now, would you say younger athletes need to be tapping into this mentality of, I don't say, I mean, I wouldn't say it's an older athlete's mentality. I would say the smarter mentality rather than just, grinding yourself to to until you realize you need to do something about it.
Well, that's a difficult one, because you don't want to stifle enthusiasm
Of course,
and creativity in athletes,
of course.
when you do want to help to channel them
Yes, that's what I meant.
into
Yeah, yeah,
into getting the best out of themselves and
exactly.
making the most
Yes,
of it.
yes,
And what I've been aware of in the techniques that are used is actually involving the athlete in seeing for themselves what they need to
the
do,
process. Yeah,
so that in a sense they have been part of the decision-making process in
right.
deciding what they
Okay.
should do, what they need to do, and have ownership of it.
Yes,
So it's through discussion, asking probing questions, that
yes.
they bring the athlete to the point where they actually see for themselves
Yeah,
what it is they need to do. I mean, one of uh, the first things I was learned was in terms of vocabulary, the growth mindset, not
hmm.
using words like can't and don't and not,
Yes.
but thinking about, how can I, uh, what is it I need to do,
Yeah,
what are the things I should change,
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
so that there's always a kind of positive attitude to it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and yeah,
Looking for ways of having a solution, not closing your mind to what you might do.
yes, I totally get that and understand. And I think what you've just said there is that question of how can I, and not looking at the what you can't do.
Mm.
Because I think what you've hit on there is obviously that growth mindset, mentality, sort of trying to open the mind and not have a closed mind on these issues or things that you're trying to develop in your sport as an athlete. Um, as you said earlier, some people may be prone to giving up easily, but if you can tap into that mindset of giving them a question of how can you change that for yourself, or how can you make that a different outcome for yourself?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point you've
But I
made there.
think there are, I mean, a lot of it is common sense,
Oh yeah.
and much of it's common sense, especially the practical aspects. I mean, there are two sides to it. There's the practical aspects and the emotional aspects, you might
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
Practical aspects really are the preparation, the planning, the um, organization, you're organizing yourself, and
Yeah.
so on. The emotional side is your attitudes. It is, concentration, confidence,
Yes.
how you might deal with pressure. What
Yeah.
are the pressures?
Hmm.
How you spot them? How would you avoid them?
Yeah. So I
And
think I think with the
getting yourself in the right place.
yes, yes, correct. I was just going to touch on if you'd like to chat more about the pressures of being an athlete, and how someone could navigate that with a growth mindset or a more positive way of navigating these sort of things, because you've got a lot of experience to talk about with that, I think. So,
Yes. Well, a lot of it depends on the type of sport it is, because
of course.
different attributes are required in different sports. The sports are very different. Some sports are ones where there's measurement,
Yes.
times, distances, height,
Yes.
weights. Others where you are playing an opponent. So it's
Yeah.
what you're doing, but it's what your opponent is doing and reacting to
Yes.
your opponent.
Hmm.
Some sports where everything counts, like in golf, playing stroke play, every
Yeah.
shot counts towards your final total.
Yes.
For example, you can lose a set 6-love, but it doesn't matter if you win if you win all the other sets.
Yeah.
So that you can discard poor performance in some sports, which you can't do in others. So
Yeah.
these are different natures. Some are low scoring games like football, where you win 1-0 or 2-1,
Yeah.
or basketball, where you win 85-75.
Hmm.
So you're scoring points or scoring goals is a different, it has quite a different context in various sports. So that it will apply differently across different sports. And in the sport I'm in, it's mainly applying to yourself, because although you might be competing against other people, you are trying to do your best possible. And in a sense, you can ignore what other people are doing. At least I find that. And you're trying to do your own best possible within whatever limitations or context you have that you're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
And as an older athlete, I think that the satisfaction comes from doing your best possible, whatever that
Yes.
is. And you yourself know what the context is.
Hmm.
And it's and you don't have to think about what others' expectations may be, because
Yeah.
that can be a pressure.
Yes.
Others expect you to do well, or you are the focus of some attention,
Yeah.
or you may have sponsors and you feel you've got responsibility for that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Fortunately, I'm not in that territory. Uh, and it's nice to be in a situation where I'm only having to please myself and
Yes.
satisfy myself. So I've got that freedom, which is
Yeah.
good. But certainly in a professional sense, and for younger athletes, if it's their livelihood, there are much different pressures, much greater pressures, more critical, and they all have different things to handle.
Yeah. I think you're kind of hitting on the nail on the head. I mean, it's a different context, use, masters. Um, Certainly, that's a good point you've made. How it depends on the sport, but I think as well, it's probably depending on individual as well, as you were saying there, kind of. So I mean, it can depend on what their strengths are mentally, or how they're wanting to train for etc. as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we'll chat a bit about now is we'll go into more into like your personal sort of story of what three areas did you change in your mentality to improve your mentality as a masters athlete. What three areas would you say that were the key things that you said once your development began as in your mental strength? What are the three areas you would say that have changed the most for you that's helped you improve?
It is a continuous process,
Of course, yes,
but
absolutely.
if I go back to the beginning when I first worked with a mental strength coach, the one I mentioned already was really the growth mindset, the positive growth mindset
Yeah.
of having your perceived limits challenged, altering your vocabulary, not thinking that you can't do this or you don't do
Yes.
that, but thinking, how can I do it, and how
Hmm. Yeah.
changes do I need to make? And for me, it was really looking beyond the next race. I was asked to what my race schedule was for the season.
Yeah.
I didn't have a race schedule because I really only looked at the next event
Hmm.
and was never sure really whether I would be able to do it or might have to withdraw from it because
Yeah.
I didn't feel I was ready.
Yeah.
But actually, discipline of mapping out a season,
Oh
a
yeah.
series of events, looking beyond the next event,
Hmm.
then writing it down.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't just sort of thinking I might do this and I might do that, but writing
Yeah.
it down makes you
Yes.
gather your thoughts together and make
Yes.
sense of it.
Make a plan.
And then attaching priorities to, in my case, the races I was going to take part in, an A, a B, a C priority, and setting out brief objectives for each one. And that really lifted my horizon.
Yeah.
So the next event wasn't my end point. I was looking beyond it. And I suppose in retrospect, I realized it was taking my mind off what I was being preoccupied with,
Mm-hmm.
the recovery, rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I was expecting to be doing the race after the next one and
Yeah, of
expecting
course.
to do the whole season, and that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Set the
and
expectation.
actually taking part in events itself was part of the rehabilitation process. I found that in a sense, it cleansed some of the things that you felt were niggles, and
Yes.
it was good that way. So writing things down, I think that was
Mm-hmm.
something I learned right at the beginning. It clarifies your thoughts, uh,
Yes.
and it makes you accountable. You've got it written down,
Yeah.
and if you've shared it with someone, that really makes you accountable. So you
Yes.
really focus on trying to make it realistic,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's there, and you have it as your guide.
Yes.
And a particularly good thing was after each event, when it's still fresh in your mind, writing down a few things that went well, that were successful. Even if your event didn't go particularly well, finding two or three good things that you could say
Yeah.
went well, and then writing down a couple of things that might have been better, could have
Yeah.
gone better, but always fewer things that could have been better than went well, no matter what the circumstances.
Yeah.
And crucially, with the things that could have been better, what you would do next time, what you would do differently next time. So you had that sort of ongoing list of things that went well and things that could be done better.
Yes.
And gradually you turned around issues that you could improve, and they
Yes.
started to appear on a list of things that had gone well.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see progress, you locking in the gains that you made
Yeah.
and addressing the areas that might be better.
Yeah. That
And that,
sounds.
and that was really stimulating, and you enjoyed the events themselves all the more through doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was just the beginning, and it built and built on that. And I've been involved in mental strength coaching, having had a mental strength coach for about 10 or 11 years now.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm still learning all the time,
That's good.
learning new things, learning new techniques.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what you've picked from that is it's also so writing things down, creating a plan, looking at the things that went well and things that could be done better. And also, even when you're saying things like that, it's the words you use to yourself when you're writing it down as well. Would you agree with that and how you're putting it down on paper?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And having a plan for the event, what you're going to do at the start, imagine yourself going right through to the finish,
Yeah.
the visualization,
Yes.
just closing your eyes and just imagining yourself at the event doing it,
Yes. Yes.
and you can pick up things through that visualization process that you could
Yes.
actually do differently.
Yes.
And also bring the other dimension into it of imagine that you're an observer looking at yourself. What
Yes.
does it look like doing it?
Yeah.
Uh, and sort of merge these two perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very interesting, and can lead to a number of changes, practical things that you could do that might make a difference.
Yeah. So let
Um, and I think it's important always to have a plan
Mm-hmm.
for your
Yes.
race, even if the plan is to just have fun and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But you enjoy it much more if it's switched on fun rather than switched off fun.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Not just doing it casually
There's,
and
exactly. Yes.
actually you're enjoying it in a positive way, and that's important, and that your plans are fresh, contemporaneous plans, not just regurgitated plans of ones you've had before. So you think
Yes.
about it, get present with it,
Yes.
and engaged with it.
Absolutely. What I was going to delve deeper into, if that's okay, visualization process you talked about, and obviously how that worked for you as an athlete going through your development with your mental strength coach, etc.
Well, I find it gets me present. Uh, you can go into an event or a game, whatever sport it is, where your mind's not fully engaged with it. You haven't thought too much about it beforehand. Your mind's on other things. You're just turning up and going through the motions. And I think it gets you out of that mindset. You've prepared, you've got a plan, and then you're thinking about what you're going to do during the event itself,
Yeah.
and how you're going to feel, how you want to feel, therefore what you're going to do in order to get yourself feeling that way. In a triathlon, you don't want to be totally busted at the end of the swim and not be able to do your
Yeah.
your bike ride and your run,
Yeah.
because they're all continuous.
Yes.
You need to, I think, certainly as an older athlete, where I find I don't get a second win very easily. When I was younger, you got your second win, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that was fine. Well, if I've used up my first win, the second win doesn't come. So I need to, um, distribute my effort carefully and think about how I want to be at the end of the
Planning.
swim or at the end of the bike ride, so as I'm going to have the best run,
Yeah.
and have the best result.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to think about it in that respect. And the enjoyment and the pleasure comes from the satisfaction of having done your best possible.
Yes.
Your best possible will be within what limitations you have, in terms of health, fitness, injuries or niggles that you're having to protect. And you know yourself what these are. Others will not necessarily know, and you can be really satisfied that you've achieved what you wanted to do, and you've done what I call the BRP, the best race possible, and
Yeah.
there's satisfaction from that.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned is, as you get older, not to compare yourself with what you've done in the past,
Yes. Agree.
because you'll always be disappointed.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
And not to compare yourself with others, but
Yes.
just
Correct.
to be satisfied with what you're doing in the present.
Yes. Because
And
that's not the. Yeah.
that's much
Exactly.
more rewarding.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I totally get where you come from, because I come from obviously a different background in sport, a racket athlete perspective. It's playing squash. And you can start looking back through it and think, if I've done this here, I should be able to do that here. But again, it's been in that present moment and understanding that things are changing, everything's evolving, and your sport and the way you move on that day may not be the same that day. So it's as you say, you take it in the present moment and take away the comparison of yourself and others, and obviously what you've done before.
Mm. But another of the techniques, I mentioned visualization, was, you hear people mentioning quite a lot, being in the moment,
Yes,
where you just
just be.
be in
Exactly,
that
just
moment
be.
of
Yeah, exactly.
time,
You just be.
not taking any cognizance of what has gone before or what is coming
Come.
next, but just
Yes,
almost in a cocoon. And certainly you can do that thing when you're cycling in a kind of time trial situation where you're just yourself, working hard and comfortable in that situation. It's an expression I've heard Novak Djokovic mentioning quite a lot, being in the moment. And I
Yes.
can imagine that apply very much in a sport like tennis,
Yes,
where
absolutely.
you've maybe had a bad shot or a bad game, or a bad point, and you've just got to shut that out of your mind and focus on the one that
The next one.
or you've maybe made a mess of your first serve and you've really got to focus on your second one and not keep
Yeah.
thinking about the mistake you've just made.
Yeah.
And I think being in the moment applies maybe in different ways in different sports.
Yes,
But
definitely.
it's very much just focusing really strongly on what you're doing at that moment in time and not letting
Yes.
anything else intrude.
Yes, I think it's that process of what you've said is, don't think what you've previously done, don't think what's coming, but obviously just be in where you're at that moment in time. And I mean, how much has that helped you, like, in your sport?
That's helped me a lot, because, and I've applied it also in orienteering,
Okay.
which is very relevant there, because you can make an error or you can lose a minute or two by some navigational mistake or a poor
Yeah.
choice of route,
Yeah.
but you mustn't let your mind wander back to that
Yeah.
and interfere with your focus on what you're doing next. So you
Yes.
must
Yes.
get into a situation of feeling you have to make it up, and
Hmm.
therefore you're going to make mistakes
Yeah.
making it up. You've just got to
Hmm.
plot it out and continue doing your thing.
Yeah.
And also, I certainly in triathlon I find it's important just to focus on what you're doing and not get distracted by what other people are doing, what else is happening around about you.
Yeah. Definitely. I think, as you say, it's that focus of, this is what the plan is. We'll be in the moment and we'll take what happens in the moment and we'll take it from there.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think
I think there are other techniques I've been picking up techniques all along. Uh, One is, I mentioned you're being present, engaged.
yeah,
The word presentness, in a sense, of where you've turn up and you're just fully engaged in what you're doing. It's a
yeah,
kind of broader concept of being in the moment,
yes,
but also models of excellence. You're observing
uh,
what other people do.
yes,
Watch people who are good at something,
yes.
and see if you can learn from watching what they do. And I'm a
Hmm.
great believer in actually models of excellence for either an overall performance
Hmm.
or a particular aspect of your game or your sport.
Yes,
Thinking of people who are really good at that.
yeah,
There could be people that you don't know, but they're big time players, or there could be people that you do know and you can speak to, ask them about it, how
yeah,
they
exactly,
put yourself
exactly.
in their shoes, what would they be doing?
Yeah,
And you can learn a lot really from observing people, and have them as your models of excellence. So you have a model of excellence for your swimming or your running or your transitions, which is getting out your wetsuit and onto your bike and this
yeah.
thing, and keep refreshing them. I think you've always got
But the
up to
refresh,
date, relevant models of excellence for aspects of your game.
yeah. I think that's a key thing you've picked upon there, because I don't know if you've seen it yourself as an athlete, or just when you're training, you do the same thing. Sometimes it works for so long, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, and then
Mm,
you have to go, okay, I need to freshen this up a bit. This has to be changed, it has to be fresh, something new that's going to work, that's going to help me evolve that a bit further in the sport.
mm. Yes, and it's always balancing the risk of making a change to what you do, to
Yes.
possibilities that might make a significant difference.
Yeah.
And this is when when you have when you plan a season, that you have events of lesser importance where you can plan to try out things
Yeah.
and see how they work,
Yeah.
but not try out things in your important events.
Yeah, of course.
What's proven and does work.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're tapering your training with that sort of style of stuff as well. So it's like, well, I've got this competition here. It's not so valuable to me, so I'll try this here. But this one is a major, so we're going to just, you know, make sure we know what we're doing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I find I'm a great believer in momentum, sort of psychological momentum that you can get from doing a series of events, say every couple of
Yeah.
weeks, and build up so that you just sharpen over
Yeah.
that period. I suppose you would call it match fit
Yeah,
in
of
other
course. Yeah, exactly. Or
contexts.
yeah, sharpen the mind while you're keeping moving through the momentum. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And you can be on autopilot in certain aspects of what you're doing.
Yes, yeah. Becoming autonomous to things as well in the sport. I mean, what sort of things would you say in your mindset now that have become automatic and it's a positive aspect that's become automatic for yourself?
Concentration.
Okay.
I went through a period when, for some reason, I seemed to slow down towards the end in the last couple of kilometers of the 20-kilometer bike ride for my sprint triathlon
Okay.
without really realizing it. But
Yes.
it was a concentration thing.
Mhm.
So, and that was something I talked to Kim about, and
Yeah.
he asked me various probing questions,
Mhm.
and the answer wasn't just, well, I'll make sure I concentrate harder.
Yes.
It was,
Bit
and it
deeper.
was what I came round to myself. If I'm losing concentration, I'm going to do this, this, and this.
Hmm.
And what is this, and this that
Yes.
I'll do? So you work out what are the things I must do if I feel that the concentration is dropping.
Yes.
And uh, I had these, and I knew that I would do these things right away without having to think about it at all. It was something that would happen automatically.
Yeah.
But actually, what happened is it solved that slipping concentration
Yes.
problem.
Hmm.
I didn't have the problem anymore because I'd actually
Yeah.
thought about it and I had some tools that I
You
was
could
going to,
use some tools you can help you with.
yes, and then I didn't need to use them because
It
uh,
became automatic.
it resolved it, having thought about it, uh,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that
recognizing.
And that's a very key thing in sport, I think, concentration, because it doesn't really matter which sport you're doing. You have to concentrate 100%, well, as much as you can for 100% as much of the time as you can in a sport, because from a racket point of view, tennis, squash, badminton, they're quick sports. You have to watch where the ball's going or the shuttlecock's going. With your triathlete, you have to watch your changes, when it's time to change, when you're going into the swim, your swimming stroke, etc. So yeah, it's a very relevant thing that people, athletes especially, whether young or old, it's a big thing to actually get right.
Mm, yes.
Yeah, so I think what we'll kind of ask you now is, what advice can you give to a masters athlete that is struggling with their mental strength or mindset for their sport? Any advice you think would be useful?
Well, to begin with, I wouldn't overthink things.
Yeah.
That can often be a problem. Um, I think that you should consider why you're doing your sport, what it means to you. Are you enjoying it? And think what is it that you enjoy about it? And just try and refresh, focus on just one or two things, especially with your feelings. I mean, for example, think of an occasion or an event that went well? What was it
Yeah.
about that performance that made it go well?
Yeah.
How did you feel at the time? Imagine yourself uh, being there, and just try and put yourself in a different place
Yeah.
and take it
So
from there.
so it's like, again, we spoke about earlier, that visualization of that place you want to be with your sport, really.
Hmm. But again, I would write these things down.
Yes,
Why why does the sport matter to you?
exactly. Yes. Why is it important to you?
And then, well, you might find that in fact it doesn't matter, and
Yeah.
you not it's not going well because you're not enjoying it, and you're rather do other things.
Yes.
And that's a valid outcome. But if in
It
fact
is.
something that does matter to you, you've got to think, why does it matter to me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it part of your identity as a person? That's what you
Mm-hmm.
do. So
Yes.
you need to go back and think, well, when have I felt good about it? When has it gone well?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine yourself back in that situation
Yeah.
and uh, press the reboot button.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that you've hit a good one there as well with asking the question, why am I doing the sport? What's it going to do for me? Am I enjoying it? I think the big one there for me is why. Like, what's the purpose of doing the sport? Does it matter or doesn't it?
Mm.
Because if it doesn't matter, then I would be questioning myself. If I was in that position, I'd be like, well, why am I doing this? Because it's not, it's not exciting me. It's not giving me enthusiasm. It's just, maybe that's where they need to pick another sport or think about something else they want to do, enjoyment that they actually enjoy and that we can progress further in. Because I think the big thing you've obviously mentioned there is enjoyment, and that's probably one of the things that takes you further in anything you do sport wise. If you enjoy doing it, you're going to keep going back. Whether you're at a point where you're in a good place with the sport, or you're still progressing, or you're at a point where you have to readjust and start again.
Mm. I think there's a point where a lot of people who have been doing sport for a long time and enjoying it, probably in their 50s, find that the body begins to break down a bit, needing repairs, and it can be a difficult period to get through, or it's a time when people actually feel that maybe they should no longer be doing this sort of thing.
Yes.
Uh, and I ran into that myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, finding it was very difficult to run. I'd had problems with Achilles tendons for
Yeah.
years, and it was getting worse. And I really had to decide, did I get a proper repair done, or should I accept that, well, and I'd
Yeah.
had my day at that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I wrote a book about my experiences,
Yes, exactly.
which I used the opportunity actually in lockdown
Mm-hmm.
to write something about my experiences,
Yes.
uh, because there's quite a lot written about doing sport in your 50s, or how to train in your 60s. But
Yes.
I realized there wasn't really anything around about people being active in sport in their 70s.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could do something, and I wrote a book called Renaissance
Yeah.
Triathlete,
It's right
which
here. I've already
you've
got
seen
it.
it, yes.
Yeah, there we go.
And it's about enjoying sport as an older athlete, and managing the physical and the mental challenges that are entailed. But the theme is really about enjoying sport,
Yes.
and uh, what is possible. And uh, if you want me to develop that a bit, I can.
Yes,
Uh,
that would be
In
good.
that it is uh, it is actually having the physical capacity to be able to do your sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that I've spent much more time on exercises for mobility and flexibility, which I
Mm-hmm.
never did when I was younger. Never thought about doing it. Didn't really have time. You just
Mm-hmm.
trained,
Yeah.
what opportunities you had. So I do spend a lot more time on doing physical exercises for movement and agility,
Yeah.
and much less volume and intensity in terms of the physical training. Just trying to focus on techniques and being smarter.
Exactly.
Because you're trying to hold what fitness you have rather than increase it.
Yes.
And but the platform really is being able to do the range of movements that your sport entails.
Yeah.
And I've developed with a team around me. I've got a physiotherapist called Anne who I see regularly. I try not to see her for treatment,
Yeah.
but she focuses on injury prevention,
Yes.
movement, core stability, these areas,
Yes.
and these are also important. And through seeing her regularly, she'll pick up on anything that might be a problem that could arise, and that gives me the platform for being able to do my sport. And working with Kim as a mental strength coach provides that cohesive element that allows you to have a performance
Yes.
from your platform of physical ability.
So it's that connection between the mind and body then, Doug, would you say?
So that is the kind of mind and body support.
Yes.
And I'm fortunate in having two people that help me, and you building up a trusting relationship where it's all very positive,
Yeah.
and I find it very effective indeed.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, I mean, the way you've rounded that up there, Doug, is quite good because you've kind of brought it into the mind and body connection of, if you can get both, keep developing both, wherever you're at, if you're a young athlete, an older athlete, um, you should, essentially see progress, um, depending on your sport and what the needs of the sport is, in some areas, and obviously you can get better in other areas as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's given me all sorts of opportunities which I had never imagined I would have,
Yeah.
of taking part in events abroad, around the world.
Yes.
In fact, since I retired, and actually being at the same events as some of the elite athletes are at.
Yes.
I'm in my category with my age group and so on, but I'm
Yes.
participating in the same location, the same arena as these world-class people, and you can
Yes.
see what they're doing and get considerable inspiration from that.
Exactly. You get a lot of
And
inspiration from that.
and going to interesting places I wouldn't have visited otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's really an exhilarating experience.
Yeah. So I was going to mention your book's actually, the foreword was done by Alistair Brownlee, wasn't it?
That's right, yes.
Yes.
A household name who doesn't doesn't need much introduction.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's amazing. So I would like to kind of finish off there, and what is your final message to any athletes that were listening today, about sport, about the psychology side of things, being a masters athlete, or just being an athlete in general? What's your final message you'd like to give them today, Doug?
I would enjoy your sport. That's the main thing. For those who are starting out, don't specialize too soon. Try all sorts of things, and then you may find what it is that you like best, or that you've got the attributes for. Join a club. There's always a good environment in a club, and take part in club activities and develop it that way.
Great.
Enjoyment's important,
Yes.
and as I said earlier, be switched on, not switched off, and you
Yes.
enjoy it all the more.
Exactly. So yeah, I think we can take away from that today is obviously enjoy what you're doing and make sure you're switched on to what you're doing. And a big thing I've obviously taken from yourself today is being in the moment.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay, Doug, I appreciate you coming on today for this podcast episode, and it's been great chatting to you, and I'll speak to you soon.
Good. It's been great for me. Pleasure speaking to you.
Great, Doug. Okay, folks, that's another episode of the Racket Athlete podcast, and we'll speak to you soon.